Ever wonder why salt, a common ingredient, is mentioned so frequently in Bible stories and verses? It may seem surprising, but salt has spiritual power far beyond what we have been taught. It is not only a spice that enhances flavor in food, but also a weapon of spiritual warfare that is used to protect, seal, and purify divine covenants. What's more, only a select few are skilled in using it to battle evil forces. Imagine learning that something as simple as salt can be the key to bolstering your faith and safeguarding your spiritual life. The significance of salt in the Bible and its spiritual function are things that no one has ever told you. When used with discernment, salt may change your relationship with God by bringing blessings and warding off curses. Best of all, this power is at your fingertips and just has to be triggered. In numerous Bible texts, salt is elevated as a symbol of purity, preservation, and covenant. It has been associated with salt since antiquity, and its significance extends beyond its culinary application. What no one has told you is that salt, when used wisely, may change your relationship with God by bringing blessings and warding off curses. Best of all, this power is right at your fingers, waiting to be triggered. The Bible emphasizes the significance of salt and its spiritual role. In many biblical passages, salt is elevated as a symbol of purity, preservation, and covenant. It has been associated with deep meaning throughout antiquity, surpassing its simple culinary application. Jesus used salt to illustrate important spiritual lessons in his teachings. For example, in Matthew 5:13, he said, "You are the salt of the earth." This illustrates how salt is used both as a physical and spiritual tool in the fight against evil, helping to preserve and purify the essence of faith. Although it may seem odd at first, the use of salt as a spiritual weapon is something that is found in the Bible. When Jesus mentioned salt, he wasn't just talking about the condiment, rather, he was referring to something that could change the environment, much like salt was used to keep food from becoming contaminated. It makes us consider how we can apply this idea in our daily lives by using salt as a constant reminder of our mission to maintain our faith against the negative influences around us in a spiritual war, where invisible forces act. Salt is a symbol of our ability to preserve holiness in a corrupt world. Imagine yourself engaged in a spiritual conflict where salt can be used in prayers or rituals to mark spiritual territory, warding off evil forces and drawing the divine presence closer. Salt is a symbol of protection found in biblical stories, where it is used to seal covenants and preserve holiness. This idea helps us see that even seemingly basic things, like salt, can have much deeper meanings than we might think. But is this the only way salt carries out its divine purpose? The divine purpose of salt in creation, according to biblical tales, salt, which was there from the beginning of creation, serves a purpose beyond its utilitarian application. As we can see in Leviticus 2 verse 13, God employed salt as an essential component of the sacred ceremonies. He states, "You shall season all your meat offerings with salt." This verse from the Bible demonstrates that salt was intentionally fashioned to be a substance that, when offered, would delight God, sealing agreements and proving the sincerity and tenacity of a commitment to the Lord, from the sacrifices made in the temple to the agreements made between God and humans. Since salt has always been associated with incorruptibility and eternity, we can see that it serves a higher purpose than that of a mere mineral when we consider its divine purpose. Imagine that by including salt in their offerings, the ancient Hebrews were upholding the covenant with God and fulfilling a commandment while also realizing the importance of preserving their faith's purity. Salt also stands for faithfulness to God's will in a world where corruption and change are constants. Salt serves as a reminder that some things, like our covenant with God, must not change. This idea causes us to consider how we can seek for that which is everlasting and unchangeable in our day-to-day lives. Using salt as an example of its spiritual purpose, but what would salt's function be in relation to other purifying elements in the Bible? Salt is a symbol of preservation and purification in biblical tales. Salt is frequently used as a symbol of preservation and purification, serving a special purpose in both the material and spiritual realms. For instance, in 2 Kings 2 verse 21, the prophet Elisha purified a city's waters by throwing salt into them and declaring, "Thus says the Lord, I have made these waters clean." meaning that death and barrenness would no longer proceed from this location. This Bible verse emphasizes the ability of salt to bring about rebirth and life. When compared to other purifying elements like fire and water, the one destruction strengthened its function as a purifying agent. Although fire destroys and water washes salt, salt retains and cleanses, keeping the integrity of what is pure in spiritual practice. Salt offers an alternative, but no less potent, viewpoint. Imagine using salt, for instance, in a prayer ritual signifying the need to maintain one's spiritual life preserved and free from the corruption of the world. Salt can also be used to mark locations, safeguard the home, or even serve as a tangible reminder of this. The ongoing preservation and purifying of faith, thinking about how salt was used to preserve sacred offerings or to purify cursed objects, reminds us of the significance of preserving the essence of what is good and pure. Salt's function extends beyond simple purification. It also preserves that which is sacred in a world where everything is transient. How does salt link to the testimony of those who use it in their religious practices? Waters prompts us to consider how we might apply this preservation to our lives while maintaining our beliefs and ideals. Many people have attested to the effectiveness of salt use in their faith practices. Salt is used as a symbol of protection and purification in several Bible verses, and this tradition continues today. For instance, some people claim that when they use salt in their prayers, they sense God's presence more strongly, as if the act of physically spreading salt around their homes or at particular times of intercession strengthens their spiritual barriers against evil. Salt is a practical example of a spiritual symbol that many believers use in their daily lives. For example, they can dissolve salt in water and use the resulting solution to purify objects and places they consider sacred, or they can put salt in their home's corn to protect the environment from negative spiritual influences. These seemingly simple gestures have a deep spiritual meaning as they relate to the biblical tradition of using physical elements to strengthen faith. These accounts of people using salt are fascinating because they relate to the experiences of a great number of people throughout history. By sharing their personal stories, people not only deepen their faith but also inspire others to consider the power of salt in their spiritual lives. This makes us consider how a common element like salt can have such a profound and long-lasting effect on our spiritual journeys. Because salt is so prevalent in biblical events and scriptures, it has historically been the subject of many unfavorable misconceptions and superstitions. Over time, certain societies have mistakenly linked salt with witchcraft or other paganism, misrepresenting its actual meaning. However, the Bible reveals that salt is, in fact, a sacred symbol of purity, covenant, and preservation that is used to seal agreements and safeguard sacred objects. As we employ salt in our spiritual activities, we must do so with discernment, understanding that it is a tool, not a talisman, even though salt is powerful. It is merely a symbol, a method by which God works, and it should not replace the Creator in our hearts. Sadly, we sometimes witness people attributing to salt an almost mystical power, forgetting that true power originates from God and that salt is merely a physical representation of this spiritual power. Salt should, therefore, serve as a reminder of our covenant with God, of our purity and spiritual preservation, but it should never be an object of veneration. We have seen throughout this journey that salt, which is found in numerous Bible stories and verses, is more than just a mineral. It also symbolizes protection, purification, and an enduring covenant with God. The real question now is, however, how will you put this into practice in your daily life? Salt can be a potent tool for bolstering your faith and safeguarding your spiritual environment. Are you ready to adopt this practice into your walk with God? Always keep in mind that salt is a representation of God's power rather than a thing to be worshipped. I ask you now, what will you do with this knowledge? If you want to keep learning and developing your spiritual life, please subscribe to the channel. By using it in your prayers and everyday life, you will be renewing your devotion to the Lord. Activate alerts, share your stories, and let's develop our faith together.